I want to introduce our speaker tonight. We're very pleased to have Chief Matt Brooks. He's a Gadsden native, graduating from Emma Sansom and Jacksonville State University. He has been in the law enforcement business for lots and lots of years. He was recently promoted to Division Chief after serving in Montgomery as the Division Deputy Chief for 4 years, and he has served in the past as the District Commander for the Division Central and Northern Districts. Neely-Henry Lake is within their Northern District. Matt also served as the State Boating Law Administrator as the Chief. He works closely with the United States Coast Guard and the National Association of Boating Administrators on all matters dealing with recreational boating and safety. Matt is in his 30th year of service with the division and was assigned to Neely-Henry Lake from 2007 till 2016, only leaving that after accepting a promotion to field supervisor. It's a real pleasure to have Matt here, and Kevin is one of his right-hand men out here. And Kevin's going to talk to, or excuse me, Matt's going to talk to us about a number of items that are new on the law books and stuff. And at the end of his discussion, he'll be open for questions. So if you could hold your questions till then, I think it's going to be.
Can you hear me?
I think it'll be all right. Yeah.
All right. Good evening. I am very thrilled to be here. Another thing, I heard him say that this organization was chartered in 1999. And at the time that it came about, as a field officer, I worked closely with it, especially during the annual cleanup that would take place on the river. So I've been affiliated with and working with this organization off and on since it began. And I was fortunate enough 2 or 3 years ago to come here and talk to one of your quarterly meetings. So it's an honor for me to be here, especially being a Gadsden native. And we've already introduced Kevin Hawkins back here. He's one of the troopers that will patrol the lake and that you will see from time to time out on the water. Kevin, like like me, is an Etowah County native, so it's a special place to him as well. And he is one of the finest troopers that we have working in the division. As a matter of fact, he's so good at what he does that we rewarded him by sending him to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration and let him stand outside in the 14-degree weather for 15 hours that particular day. So we know.
Thank you.
We know how to take care of our folks. One of the joys of my job is being able to travel around the state and talk to the different organizations such as this one that exist, and there are quite a few. I spend I don't know how many hours and miles traveling to do this, but it really is something I enjoy doing, and it's helped us establish relationships that otherwise we wouldn't have, and it gives you guys a chance to get to know us a little bit, and likewise with us getting to know you. And when I talk to organizations such as this, I like to always talk a little bit about where we are as a state and where the recreational boating safety program is statewide, and then also talk a little bit about local activities and local things that are going on. So that's what I'd like to do tonight. And then of course at the end, I'll be glad to answer or attempt to answer any questions that you have. So Alabama is, I'm going to tell you a few things that you may not know, and then one of them you'll probably need to fact check me on this because I cannot find the source for it after I read it. But we have over 1 million acres of recreational waterways in the state of Alabama. Think about that, 1 million acres. Every Alabamian, and this is the fact check one, lives within an hour of some recreational body of water where their house is. We are so blessed, as a matter of fact, that other states and people from other parts of the country have now taken note, and tourism, recreational boating tourism is something that's driving a lot of what's going on in the state with us, especially on bodies of water like Smith Lake, Lake Gunnersville, Lake Martin, especially the Gulf of Mexico, where we have the Intercoastal, Mobile Bay, and all kinds of river systems that flow out into the coast there. So it's something that is very critical to Alabama. It's a large generator of revenue for not only local governments, but the state itself. And it's something that not only are we charged by federal law for implementing and maintaining, but by state law as well. And so I, as the chief of the division, represent Alabama's efforts to institute that boating safety program and ensure that it's run according to federal standards and the state laws. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background information. In fiscal year 2024, And this is how we operate in reporting statistics. We had 96 total boating incidents reported and investigated. Those 96 incidents resulted in 9 fatalities, 47 injuries, and almost $1.2 million in property damage. Now, that's in the state. Now, you may think that that's a lot, but that actually represents a 20-year low for us as a division. Wow. We're not proud of any time anyone dies, but we are proud of the fact that we've been able to, through not only our efforts, but the public's efforts, to lower those numbers and make boating safer in the state of Alabama. Now, locally, and this, I'm going to go all the way back to fiscal year 2020, we've had 7 boating accidents reported on Neely Henry Lake with 1 fatality, 5 injuries, and $58,000 in property damage. We were fortunate this most recent fiscal year to have 2 reported incidents with no fatalities, 1 injury, and $16,000 in property damage. So that's kind of what we're looking at as far as the things that we respond to accident-wise. Contributing factors in boating accidents in Alabama, these are the top 6: improper lookout, operator inattention, operator inexperience, reckless or careless operation, operating too close to another vessel or a person in the water, and then, of course, alcohol impairment. That's always going to be in the top group. And we actually work very closely with the organization that he mentioned earlier called the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators and the Coast Guard. And one of the things that really has caught my eye is that these contributing factors, not only are they the same here in Alabama, but they're pretty much the same contributing factors for the top accident causes in other states and nationally. So it's something that we see year in and year out, these types of things, and we have altered our educational programs and our enforcement programs to try to address these things, to cut down on some of these incidents. And I think that it's paying dividends, and we're going to continue to do that as we go forward. So I mentioned enforcement and education. Our officers, our troopers, they basically have a job function that has 2 E's in it. They're responsible for enforcing the boating education laws in the state, but also equally important, they're responsible for educating the boating public, not only on the laws, but on things that may be specific to that body of water or that area, on how to keep them safe, things to look out for. And we're going to set up a boating safety class here in this area soon. We'll probably do more than one. And that's my recommendation, is that if you have especially younger folks that are wanting to go through this education themselves, bring them to a class. Don't let them do the online class, because actually meeting the troopers that enforce the law and learning some of these things is very helpful. And they also get to meet the trooper and know them, that they can call on them in the future for help if they need it. So education is big. We teach a number of classes every year. We go to all kinds of school functions. We go to the boat shows. We do corporate safety meetings. Our guys are out there working pretty hard year-round to get this message out there and to help people be safer. But also, enforcement is something that we do, and that's probably one of the more unpopular topics, and where we clash with the public most often is when we have to actually issue a citation, or in some cases carry somebody to jail. So I'll give you a little bit of background on that. In fiscal year 2024, we had 18,916 contacts with boaters in the state of Alabama. That's where the actual troopers were making a boat stop for whatever reason that existed, and interacting with those boaters. As part of that, we conducted 5,672 vessel inspections. We issued 7,166 citations and 9,017 warnings. And actually, let me back up. We issued 1,900 citations on the water. The 7,200 is total for everything else that we enforce, but 1,900 on the water, and we issued 7,000 warnings on the water. So we're issuing about a 4-to-1 ratio, warnings versus citations. You see our boats with the blue lights going pulled up along somebody, it doesn't necessarily mean they're getting a ticket. We take that opportunity also to educate them and speak with them as we're conducting our business. We also had 564 boater assists, meaning that we towed someone in, or whatever the case was, that they needed help. We assisted them in getting the issue resolved. So what are some of the top citations that we issued? We had 224 citations issued, this is statewide, for insufficient personal flotation devices. And that's a basic item of safety equipment that we are fairly serious about when it comes to enforcement. 305 vessel registration violations. Can be anything from not having a boat registered to not having the correct decal placed on the boat to not having the paperwork in the boat at the time that it stopped. Operating a vessel without a license, and I'm glad to see this number come down a little bit, but we still issued 70 in the state. And careless operation of a vessel, 205. Violation of restrictive signs or buoys, we had 211 of those. And then this is a good one too that we've issued very few warnings for. Children younger than the age of 8 not wearing their personal flotation devices. Going along with that, we have 252,000 vessels registered in the state of Alabama. That number has stayed fairly level over the past 6 or 7 years in Alabama. COVID had, the first year COVID came out, we had a little bit of a spike as people were looking for ways to get out of the house and enjoy themselves. But we're leveled out now about 252,000. But we also conducted another 29,000 vessel renewals during the year. So our total interaction with vessel registration transactions was a little over 280,000. So that gives you just kind of a little bit of a snapshot about what the division's involved in, what we're doing as far as enforcement education goes. And I believe it was 2021 or 2022 the last time I was here.
I think so.
And since I was here last, we have had a few new boating safety laws enacted, and I'd like to just kind of touch on these with you as well, because some of them you may not be aware of, but some of them are also very important as we go forward. And I can say that the legislature went into a session earlier this week. Matter of fact, I came from a meeting with one of the representatives this morning about a new proposed piece of legislation on my way up here to talk with you guys. What happens when legislation is looked at is that our state RBS program has to mirror or match the federal law. It can't exceed and it can't differ from the federal law in an area that the federal law covers. So this is something a lot of folks do not know, but the Coosa River system, as designed and as enacted in federal law, is considered to be currently jurisdictional with the U.S. Coast Guard. So our laws that are in place that are out here for the Coosa River system, which are the same as the rest of the state, have to match or mirror what the federal government has. And the last major comprehensive update that we had or overhaul of our boating safety laws was in 1994 with the Robertson-Archer Act. And if you recall, that piece of legislation, which was the first of its kind in the country, requires you to have a vessel operator license to operate a motorized vessel on state waters. So that was that was 31 years ago when that happened. Well, I mean, you guys know a lot's happened in 31 years, and a lot of different types of boats are out there that weren't even dreamed of back in 1994. Now, what we have done over the years is we've tinkered with it a little bit, made some adjustments to stay in line with federal law, and also from our needs. So when the legislature goes in session, usually about 6 months out, we have already gone to our boss, Secretary Hal Taylor, and we've said, these are the things that we need to help us do our jobs, or these are the problems that exist that need to be corrected legally and lawfully. And he takes that and he meets with the governor and the people that he needs to meet with, and they come up with a package of bills that ALEA sponsors. And usually there's one or two that we will put out that we ask for, and it usually takes 4 to 5 years to even really get it seriously considered, unless it's something that's a hot button topic, but it does work. And organizations like this one help us do that, because we always recommend, if you've got an issue or a problem that we can't help you with, reach out to your representative or your senator. Let them know that there's an issue. And some of these laws that I'm going to touch on came about specifically through the actions of different groups around the state of Alabama. Change to currently match the federal law is the emergency cutoff switch update. So in the past, only vessels that were less than 24 feet and having greater than 50 horsepower had to have an emergency cutoff switch on them. Now, every vessel that's less than 26 feet in length has to have an emergency cutoff switch. And if it's more than what they call 115 static horsepower, static thrust, 115 pounds of static thrust, which essentially the Coast Guard says is a 3 horsepower motor. So it's broadened the classification of boats that have to have it, but it's also changed it in that when you're operating that type of a boat, you're no longer required to wear it if you're idling, which we recommend you wear it all the time, no matter what. But if you're docking or loading your boat on a trailer, you're not required to wear it as well. It doesn't have any change on personal watercraft. It still has to be attached to the operator when they're operating. So that's one of them that's gone into effect. Another one is that we had a little bit of a change that affects everybody in the state with regard to skiing and water sports activities. Prior to this law going into effect, you could ski or engage in a water sport activity from 1 hour prior to sunrise to 1 hour after sunset. Now it shortens that down to just sunrise to sunset, which brings us into compliance with federal law. The other part of that law has to deal specifically with wakeboarding and wake surfing and is only relative to certain bodies of water. And I can say that we hear the complaints, we get the complaints, and we know what goes on, on our bodies of water. We don't hear a lot about wake surfing and wakeboarding complaints here. We really don't on this lake. And I know that there are some boats out there. I've seen them myself. But as far as an issue here locally, we don't really hear that. And actually, that law was passed into several other states as well, and the Water Sports Industry Association supported that and sent a lobbyist to Montgomery to help with that bill. Probably another one that's most important that just went into effect on October the 1st is, and this is something I asked for a number of years and we pushed, is that now everyone across the board has to have some type of boater safety education when they operate. And this was specifically geared towards out-of-state residents, because before this, out-of-state residents could come here and enjoy a 45-day exemption from having to have that certification. I'm 56 years old, so if I go out here to boat recreationally, I have to have the license. Somebody from Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Washington State could come here and wouldn't have to have it. And one of the things that parlayed into is that of these accidents that we had reported, we found out that 25% of the accidents were involving out-of-state operators. So we go back to the 252,000 registered boats in Alabama, and I can tell you for the first time in my career, which I'm lucky to be able to do this, I spent 4th of July week in Orange Beach last year, and I worked every day on patrol with our guys in Orange Beach. And the Alabama registration was common, but also were tons of other states' registrations, because there's an influx of those boats. So if you take 252,000 registered boats, there's no telling how many come from out of state that go to those areas, go to Smith Lake. You go to Smith Lake now, you see a lot of Mississippi registrations. Any of the impoundments on the eastern part of our state, such as Harding, Eufaula, Wedowee, and Weiss, you see a lot of Georgia registrations. So there's a lot of people coming from outside of our state that are boating here that have no required knowledge of our laws or our safety issues. And so now that's changed that. What we do allow them to do, though, is if their state requires them to have some type of boater safety education in order to operate in their state, they can either have that or they can have the Alabama non-resident vessel operator's license. So if you have friends or family from out of state that come in, they will have to have one of those two things when they're operating a motorized vessel to present to us, and if we ever were to stop them for any reason. Another law that we have going into effect that may affect this lake down the road is that on Smith Lake, Weiss Lake, Wedowee, Shoal Creek above the Highway 72 bridge on the Tennessee River, and Smith Lake all have a 100-foot proximity law, and Lake Harding have a 100-foot proximity law now that says that any vessel that's operating within 100 feet of shoreline, pier, dock, or other structure has to be operated at idle speed. And the reason I bring this up now is because I understand that there are a couple of other areas that are going to ask to have that law open back up so that their body of water can be added as well. I don't know that Neely Henry is one of those lakes that's really that law would be needed on. I mean, that's what you guys would need to tell your legislators and tell us as we go forward with it. But we're about to get into the teeth of trying to enforce that law on those bodies of water. And it's been in existence for a number of years in the state of Georgia. And it's worked very well over there. Now, people are concerned that we're just going to write everybody a ticket, that's within 100 feet of these areas. And what I say to that is it's a tool for us to address those issues when they occur and when we have problems. And on your registration, there's a very specific way that your vessel registration is required to be displayed on your boat. I would say that right now I could probably go out to any local marina and probably half the boats there would not have their registration displayed properly. So technically we could stop everybody that we saw that way, for a probable cause violation and talk with them. we're going to use common sense on the enforcement of this particular statute as it goes forward, as we are on all of them. We're going to continue to use a heavy dose of that. But that pretty much covers where we are and where we've been, where we're going. We have a group of people that work for us that it's more than just a job to them. In my 30 years, which is really neat, because 1999, I stood in this room and I taught a boating safety class with about 175 people in it when the law was going into effect that you had to have the certification. So to be here 30 years later as the chief and stand up here and be able to talk about this and with the experiences I've had in 30 years is really, really nice to be able to do. Things are maybe not perfect, but they're better. They're continuing to get better, and part of that has to do with the people, again, that we have working for us. To these folks, it's more of a calling than it is a career. It's more of a passion. They're very serious, very compassionate, very passionate about what they do. And usually when people come to us, they either stay forever or they leave pretty quickly, because it's a whole different set it's a different environment, it's a different overall type of people that you deal with, but there are also a lot of demands that are placed on us and a lot of problems that come up that a traditional officer, a deputy sheriff, would be able to have plenty of resources to help. And we have pretty much a you catch them, you clean them philosophy, because we are the only agency in the state of Alabama that is charged with enforcing boating safety laws and implementing the RBS program. A lot of the cities and counties now have patrol boats, and they'll come out from time to time and help us down towards Mobile. There's a pretty good presence of Mobile County and Mobile City, and also Orange Beach officers that work the area. But for the most part, we are the ones that are out there, and typically we operate on a one-person, one-post deal. Like when I was here, I was a one-man police department on this lake, just like these guys are going to be. Whatever problem happened, it came to me to solve. And sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't, but I never stopped trying. And that's pretty much how the philosophy is that we have as an agency. We may not have all the answers, and we may not be able to solve all your problems, but we will try to help you. So with that in mind, I will be glad to try to answer any questions that you have. But I will say this before you raise your hands. You may not like the answer, but I promise you it will be the straight answer. Yes, sir.
Join us. NeelyHenryLake.org